Hi, everybody. Welcome back. In case you missed it last week, in case you missed our class last week, my name is Katie Maish. I'm a health educator at Providence, and I'm going to lead you through the Better You curriculum over the next 6 weeks. And I'm so glad you guys are all here for week 2. So welcome back. Okay, so let's briefly review what you can expect each week during our hour-long class session. So this is just a review. We'll meet each Tuesday at 5:30 for the next 6 weeks. Each week, we're going to cover a different topic related to blood pressure self-management. And then just as a reminder, because we do have so many people in attendance, which is so wonderful, we're just going to be using the chat feature to communicate and interact with one another. So feel free to respond to anything you hear this evening in the chat box at any time. You can submit a question at any time. And then just as a reminder, when you're submitting your chats or your questions, would you just please make sure to use the drop-down menu and select all panelists and attendees. That way we can all see your questions, and then the responses will come in and make more sense. So we have Gretchen James here with us today. Gretchen is a Providence educator and physician assistant. She is here with us this evening to answer questions. So thank you so much for being here again this week, Gretchen.
Sure, it was really fun last week, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. All right, you guys, so let's go over today's agenda. So we are actually going to start this week with a live demo of how to take your blood pressure at home. We had a lot of questions about taking your blood pressure readings at home. So I'm going to do a live demo. Hopefully it will work for you guys to be able to see me well. We'll go over that in detail, and then we'll take questions. Make sure you guys all feel comfortable with that. After that, we're going to check in and just see how last week went for you guys. Today's topic is learning how to eat healthy. So after we cover all things healthy eating, we're going to watch a cooking demo video brought to you by Rosars and the American Heart Association. And then we'll cover your to-dos for this upcoming week. So let's go ahead and do the blood pressure demo so we can turn off the PowerPoint. I'm just going to adjust my camera just a little. So hopefully you guys can see me because I'm going to scoot back here. Okay, so you can't see my feet, but my feet are flat on the floor. So you want to make sure you're in a comfortable sitting position with next to a table, ideally where your arm can rest on the table, or here I have a rest on my chair here. So a couple of things to remember. You want to be sitting for about 5 minutes before you do your first reading. Try to use the bathroom beforehand. Don't eat a large meal beforehand, and no exercise, alcohol, or tobacco before you take your blood pressure. All of those things can increase your reading. And then I wanted to point out here, because we had a couple questions about this. So I have here the same cuff that we gave you guys in your welcome packet. And it does come with 2 different size cuffs. So we have what is called an adult cuff. And then this one here is actually called an adult large, and it's just a bit longer. So that way, if the circumference of your arm is a bit larger, then you can use this adult large cuff, and it should give you a more accurate reading, and it shouldn't squeeze the arm as hard. So some people were saying it was a little bit painful. So we want to make sure you're using the right size cuff. If you find that you need an adult extra large cuff, please reach out to us and we'll send you a link to where that you can buy those. Okay, so here's the measurement tool here. This is the base. So first, we just want to plug this in. I do want to point out that there are 2 ports. There's one port here with kind of like a silver thing in the middle. That is not where the cuff goes. It actually goes in the other side, the left-hand side. And it should fit very, very snugly. You kind of got to push it in there. And then you can go ahead and rest that on the table. And then your cuff actually goes on. I think a lot of people put it on upside down on accident. It's a little bit counterintuitive. So first, I just want to point out I'm not wearing a good shirt here to slip my arm out of, but if I were at home, I would take my arm out of this sleeve so that I could have a bare arm. So pull on the cuff. The tubing should be coming down so that it can cross, if you can see this here, my forearm and my fingers like this. So tighten the cuff as best you can. It is a little bit difficult, I realize, when you're doing it at home, but do the best you can. And then you're just going to hold the tubing. We want the tubing kind of out straight like this, just across the forearm, and then the actual blood pressure reader can be sitting in front here. So I'm sitting flat with my back resting against the chair, my feet on the floor, and then at this point, this does not say anything. I'm just going to hit start. It's going to flash what looks like a U1. It's going to show you the most previous reading, and then the cuff is going to start to inflate. It's really important that you don't talk during this process, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to continue talking. So it's going to inflate up until a certain point. It will flash a tiny heart at the bottom. That's fine. It's That's just part of its calculation. That's totally fine that it's doing that. That doesn't mean it's broken or anything. And then you just wait for your reading. It does take a little bit longer than a reading you would get at a doctor's office. And then the cuff will totally deflate, and then you'll see your reading, the systolic number on top and the diastolic number on the bottom, just like we talked about last week. I'm going to take this off. If you're doing this at home, the recommendation would be then to wait for 1 more minute and then take your blood pressure again. Okay, let's scoot on back over here. And let's see, I'm going to try and answer a few questions now about the cuff specifically. We'll have lots of time for questions today, but if anyone has any questions specifically about the cuff, someone wrote in, no talking during the measurement. That is true. Don't talk when you take your measurement. Just give me a second here, you guys. Does it matter if it's your left arm or your right arm? Gretchen, I think you addressed that last week, but will you just remind us if it matters which arm?
No, it shouldn't matter which arm that you use. Some people do have differences in their arm pressures, and that would be something that you'd want to discuss with your primary care provider.
Okay, perfect. Juliet wrote in, you could take your blood pressure cuff to your next doctor's appointment so they can confirm calibration. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So Gretchen, if they're having higher results from their home cuff than they do at their doctor's office, is there kind of like an explanation for that, or is it following procedures? We've gotten that question a few times.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have variations. I would say it's more common to have a higher blood pressure in the doctor's office than it is at home, but certainly you can have that. I saw that somebody had talked about having blood pressure differences between the morning and the evening. And certainly that is the case, especially if you take medication. A lot of medications are designed as twice daily drugs or once daily drugs, and they're not perfectly 24 hours. So all sorts of things can affect that, but it is normal to have blood pressure variations during the day. So don't worry too much about it unless it's really significant. And then, of course, talk to your primary care provider about it.
Okay, perfect. And then can you talk a little bit about the differences between the morning and evening measurements? Is one more important than the other?
I wouldn't say that one's more important than the other. I think when I have patients and I'm wondering if they're having, if I need to adjust their blood pressure medications, I like to have them take blood pressure readings at different times during the day and kind of record those differences so that I can really see what the trend is, because it is normal to have differences during the day.
Okay, perfect. And then one last question here. If you have to take blood pressure medicine, should you take it before you do your first reading or after?
Well, I wouldn't say that it matters necessarily. You can take your blood pressure, because a lot of these medications, they're longer acting. So some of them, like I said, are extended release and they're 24-hour drugs. Some of them are shorter acting. Even with similar names, they have differences that you might not realize. And so you're not going to, I mean, it's good to just take your blood pressure at different times during the day if you're looking for an issue or that you need to have it adjusted. So I would just say, if you're really concerned about your blood pressure and you have a log, take it, 3 times during the day at different times, and then kind of relax about it in the future and see if there's a difference there, and then talk to your primary about that.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. Okay, so last week, each of you identified something you could do that would potentially lower your blood pressure. So if you could just type in the chat, this should be fun. We'll just read through some of your guys' answers. I just want to know, how did it go? Kind of what were your successes or challenges? And I will just read back some of your guys' answers as they come in. Get caught up here. Gina said they watch their salt more closely. Great job, Gina. Linda found that she likes oatmeal better than eggs. I love that. What a great realization. Lisa, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Exercise every day. That is wonderful. Mariko quit drinking. Wow, you guys. Let's see, I saw one in here. Lisa says it's very challenging to keep the 1,500 milligrams a day in salt. We're going to talk more about that today, but I agree. It is a challenge to get there, but I'm glad you're trying. Heidi says, I've done 2 things, started roasting a pan of veggies for the whole week and walking in the mall to avoid the cold. That is a great suggestion. Nice job, Heidi. Terry challenged herself to de-stress at work. I love that. Coco says, my goal was to walk outside at least 3 times this week. It was beautiful to go out in the snow with the dogs. You're so great, Coco. Good for you getting out in the cold. Fran shoveled snow and carried wood for the fire stove. Nice. That's some great exercise. You guys did so good. I can't read this full name here, but someone mentioned their typical exercise is walking, but they've been doing a lot of shoveling snow. I just love that. You're giving yourself a little bit of variance. I think it's so important to say, usually when the weather's nice, I walk, but I got in my exercise with snow shoveling. That's wonderful. Someone mentioned they're eating oatmeal every day, cut alcohol, made a relaxing playlist, and exercise outside daily. Wow, I hope you saw some good improvements in those numbers. You guys did so great this week. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let's see. Next slide, please. So today we are going to go over all things healthy eating. We're going to start with, oh, sorry, let me back up here. We're also going to look at how a healthy diet positively impacts heart health. So I'd like to start this week's topic off just with a question. Again, you're just going to write it in the chat. So what does it mean to you when someone says that they eat healthy? Or if you were to tell me, I eat a healthy diet, what would that mean to you? What exactly does a healthy diet mean to you? Lots of vegetables, reduce sugar, absolutely. A diet that's good for your body, less processed foods, cutting out junk food. You guys are sending them in so fast. This is great. Lots of answers, no processed foods. I love to see that. You guys are kind of on board with that. Less salt, less sugar, more vegetables, less red meat. Love that one. Less prepackaged foods. Absolutely. No red meat, no processed sugars, no McDonald's. I like that. No popsicles. Cut out processed fried foods. Lisa says lots of colors. I love that. Vegetables, fish, fruit. I'm going to scroll down here. So Lisa says, healthy diet to me means lots of fresh food, veggies, lean protein, and a moderate amount of complex carbs. Wonderful. Less fat, more fruit and veggies, less processed food, less takeout food. More fish. Great, you guys. I feel like you have a really good idea of healthy eating in general. So today, what we go over might be a review for some of you. For some of you, it might be new information. But hang in there with me, and hopefully it will be interesting. There'll be some parts for everyone. So next slide, please, Maria. Okay. So let's just start today or this evening with some basic nutritional recommendations. So over the next 9 slides, I'm going to outline the general healthy eating guidelines from the American Heart Association. I just want to tell you ahead of time, I'm going to pause about every 3 slides to answer questions. So you can just keep them coming, and then I'll answer them kind of in as they come in every 3 slides. And also, probably mostly send them over to Gretchen for answers. But I do want to mention that we will have a dietitian joining us next week. We're going to be going over all things sodium next week. So if there's anything we can't answer today or anything we don't get to, we can maybe ask the dietitian next week, or you can save your question for the dietitian next week. Okay, so the first recommendation here is consuming at least 4.5 cups of fruits and vegetables each day. So fruits and vegetables contain a variety of essential vitamins and minerals, plus they are low in calories, fat and sodium, and high in fiber. Fiber is one of the most important elements of a healthy diet, and unfortunately, only about 5% of Americans are achieving the adequate intake of recommended fiber. So lots and lots of people mention fruits and veggies. When I ask, what does eating healthy mean to you? That's wonderful. And one of the biggest benefits is the nutrients and the fiber that we get from fruits and vegetables. Next. Okay, so next up, we have oily fish. So this type of fish is rich in omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's a long name, it just means it's rich in the good fats that we want to be consuming. So these type of fats have been shown to reduce inflammation and potentially lower the risk of heart disease, cancer, and arthritis. So the recommendation here is to consume 2 3.5 ounce servings of oily fish each week. Some good options are salmon, tuna, trout, mackerel, or sardines. And just as kind of a side note, fried fish is not recommended because frying it kind of offsets some of that nutritional benefit. So it would be best to do baked, grilled, broiled, that kind of thing. And I also want to acknowledge that fish is expensive. And for those of us who might be on a budget, sometimes 2 dinners worth of fish doesn't seem doable. So something that I've noticed is, depending on where you shop, at the supermarket that I shop at, they sell frozen fish in vacuum packs, either kind of in like a grab and go or in pre-packaged bags in the freezer aisle. And that fish tends to be a lot cheaper than the fresh fish that comes from the meat counter. So if you're looking for a little bit of a cheaper option, look in the frozen section at your grocery store. Okay, next. Okay, so next up, let's talk about whole grains. I have lots to say about whole grains. So whole grains are naturally high in fiber, which, like we talked about, is a very important component of a healthy diet. They help you to feel full and satisfied. They are also linked to a lower risk of heart disease, diabetes, certain cancers, and other health problems. So when trying to incorporate whole grains into your diet, ask yourself where you can substitute a refined grain for a whole grain. So for example, instead of having your white bread and your wheat bread, try to ask yourself, could I sub out the white bread for wheat bread? So not adding in additional grains, but just subbing them out for white grains. So examples of whole grains include whole wheat bread, pasta, brown rice, quinoa, farro, corn, and many more. There's lots of different types of grains. If you are gluten intolerant, or if you're avoiding gluten for any reason, you can use a variety of whole grains that don't contain wheat gluten. So that's just what we're trying to avoid if you are avoiding gluten. So I looked up a list here. So things such as quinoa, oats like oatmeal, buckwheat, amaranth, corn, brown rice, all of these things don't contain gluten. So that would be an alternative for those of you that are avoiding gluten. And then there's lots of different types of flours out there now that you can use that don't contain wheat gluten as well. So I included a picture here of down on the bottom right, the whole grain stamps, the yellow stamps. These are, I think, very helpful when you're shopping for whole grains. So next time you're buying breads or crackers, things like that, and you want to see if it's a whole grain, look for this yellow stamp. Labels on breads and crackers can be really confusing because people are allowed to say certain things, are allowed to claim certain things on breads and pastas and crackers that make it sound like it's a whole grain when it's actually not. So it's good to look for the stamp to make sure it is a whole grain. And then if it doesn't have a stamp, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a whole grain. If it doesn't have a stamp, you want to look at the the ingredient list and see if whole grain is listed as one of the first ingredients. So I just want to share a quick story with you guys. I've been working as a health educator, helping people with their nutrition and this type of thing for about 9 years. And I had a class, we were talking about whole grains, and I thought, oh, I'll bring in the bag that my bread comes in so I can show my class what a whole grain bread would look like. So I went home, I grabbed the bag, and I realized I had not been eating whole grain bread, and I'd been eating this bread for about 3 years. So I was duped. It was brown, it looked like a whole grain. The bag said something about whole wheat, or I'm not sure what it said, but it just goes to show it's very confusing. So look for the stamp, look for the ingredient list. That's how you're going to know for sure you're getting a whole grain product. Okay, so lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to just pause here and take questions. So first question here, for weight loss and better eating, should more vegetables be eaten than fruits? Gretchen, do you want to chime in on that?
Sorry.
That's
I would
okay.
say the answer is yes, more vegetables than fruit. I mean, fruit still has a lot of carbohydrates or sugar in it. So yeah, the more vegetables you eat, probably the better.
Okay, perfect. Would someone see a change in their blood pressure from a week of changes that they've made so far?
I wouldn't guess so, but I mean, if you lost a lot of weight, maybe you would, but that's not probably very healthy to do anyway. So I'd be patient with yourself. Probably a month or 3 months would be more realistic to see a trend of better blood pressure.
Okay, perfect. What if someone doesn't like fish? What's a good substitute for them?
Well, I think, if you're dead set on having some sort of protein that's from an animal, definitely turkey and chicken are better than red meat. A lot of people recommend actually only one serving of red meat for an entire month. I think yours is a little bit more generous than that. I mean, everybody's a little bit different in what they recommend, but certainly pescatarians or fish eaters tend to have the greatest longevity in life. So pescatarians are people who just eat fish and no red meat, chicken, or turkey, and then eat the rest vegetarian.
Okay. Okay, this is a great question. This person says they have a hard time with fiber. They have IBS. They're eating a low FODMAP diet. Any tips for getting more fiber?
Yeah, that's tricky. That might be a good question for the dietitian next week.
Yeah,
So yeah.
okay. And then let's see, I'm trying to keep an eye on time too, you guys. We have lots to go over today, but let's see okay, so you mentioned if you were eating animal sources, Gretchen. This person says, what is a good option if you are a vegetarian or a vegan?
For
For
protein
replacing
sources.
fish, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, a good protein source for a vegan is any kind of legumes, so the beans and that kind of thing. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I guess soy would be too. I'm not a vegan, but I have lots of close friends that are, and they do really well with it, and they're all athletes, like a couple of them are professional athletes. So there's certainly nothing wrong with being vegan.
Okay, great. Okay, you guys, I'm going to move on, and we'll keep coming back to the questions list as we go. So let's go to the next slide, please, Maria. Okay, so next up we have sodium here. So just as a general guideline or a general blanket statement, most people eat too much sodium. The average American eats about 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day. Having less sodium in your diet may help you lower or avoid high blood pressure. The American Heart Association recommends an ideal limit of less than 1,500 milligrams per day for most adults, especially those with the diagnosis of high blood pressure. I know there's going to be lots of questions about sodium today, but we're going to spend the entire session next week going over sodium, where it comes from, how to lower it in your diet and whatnot. So I'm going to kind of quickly go breeze over this and we'll cover that next week. Okay, next. Maria, will you advance the slide? Thank you. Consuming too many sugar-sweetened beverages increases a person's risk of developing heart disease and high blood pressure. These types of drinks can also harm your teeth, cause joint pain, and may lead to developing diabetes. So the AHA recommends consuming no more than 36 ounces of sugary beverages a week. And that is, if we're just kind of putting it in terms of drinks, 3 cans of Coke or Pepsi. So that would be the upper limit. Sugar sweetened drinks are anything with added sugar. They include, but are not limited to, soda, sugary coffee drinks, energy drinks, sweet tea, fruit cocktail drinks, and sugary alcoholic beverages. So the best way to remove sugary drinks from your diet is to replace them with something else. Obviously, the best replacement is water, but sometimes we're not in the mood for water. Some people don't like plain water. So you could try water flavored with fruits or vegetables. You could try sparkling water, black coffee, unsweetened tea if you're in the mood for some caffeine, or even a diet drink option would be better than a full sugar option. So it is important to note that these recommendations are for adults. Sugary drink recommendations for kids are even less. So kids under 2 should have no sugary drinks. And the American Heart Association recommends that children 2 years and older consume no more than 8 ounces of sugary drinks per week. Okay, next. Sorry, you guys. I think the slides are lagging just a little bit, so I'm going to keep going and then hopefully the slides will catch up with me. So nuts, legumes, and seeds are good sources of protein, healthy fats, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Legumes such as beans and lentils can be a healthy substitute for meat, like Gretchen mentioned. And as meat tends to have more fat and cholesterol than these non-meat protein sources. So a serving of legumes, which when someone says legumes, that just means beans or lentils, is a half a cup. And a serving of nuts or seeds is 1 ounce. An easy way to measure a serving of nuts is a very small handful. I know we all have different size hands, but don't try to overload your hand. Just a small handful can be about a 1 ounce serving of nuts. So if beans and lentils tend to cause you an upset stomach or make you gassy, someone else wrote in, you know, they have a hard time with fiber. Beans and lentils have a very high fiber content. Something that has helped me immensely and my friends as well is buying dried variety of beans and lentils, soaking them for a period of time, and then cooking them either in a pressure cooker or on the stovetop. That helps get rid of some of the harder to digest proteins that are in the beans and lentils. And it also makes the nutrients more readily available for your body. So there's kind of a win-win there. There's nothing wrong with buying canned varieties or pre-cooked varieties. We want to try and look for lower sodium options if we're doing that, and we always want to rinse. We'll talk more about that next week. But if you have the time and the resource to buy a dried bean and soak it overnight before you cook it, that could potentially help with the uncomfortable feelings that a lot of fiber can sometimes cause. Okay, next slide, please. So eating processed meat is associated with an increased risk of many chronic diseases, including high blood pressure, heart disease, and bowel and stomach cancer. Processed meat is also usually very high in sodium, which, as we touched on a few times already, is something people with high blood pressure want to avoid. So the American Heart Association recommends eating no more than 2 servings of processed meat each week. So just 2 servings a week. So think about if you're someone that maybe likes to eat a sandwich every day, that would mean cutting back to just 2 sandwiches a week. Um, and eventually, if you could get yourself there, cutting out processed meat altogether would be the end goal. So I just wanted to share a quick study with you guys. This is from Harvard in 2010. It just showed that on average, each about 2-ounce serving of processed meat, which is the equivalent of 1 to 2 slices of kind of thicker deli meat or 1 hot dog, was associated with a 42% higher risk of developing heart disease and a 19% higher risk of developing diabetes. So overall, these processed meats just really they don't do well for our bodies. So cutting back as much as you can is really great. So just to give you an idea, you see the picture of the hot dogs here. Processed meats include lunch meat, hot dogs, salamis, sausages, any type of canned meat would be considered a processed meat, and actually a jerky would be considered processed meat as well. So if you're searching for a healthier lunch meat option, because I do realize that this is a convenient thing to make, like a sandwich or to make for children, try to always choose the fresh deli meats that you get straight from the counter. A lot of times they'll have like a no nitrates added or a low sodium option. Sometimes they actually have a no sodium added option, which would be even better. If you can't do the stuff from the deli, then try to choose the lower sodium or no nitrate added options that come in the packages. Excuse me. And then always try to choose the leanest cut of deli meats possible. So instead of roast beef, trying to choose roast chicken or turkey, that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to pause again here to take some questions. So, okay, so this is great. I'm glad this person clarified because I was wondering. So this person was wondering, their question about not liking fish was more aimed at an alternative way to get the benefit of the heart healthy oil that those fish have, as opposed to an alternate protein source.
Yeah, I actually answered that in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's really easy to take fish oil. They come in 1,000 milligram capsules, and it's recommended to take usually really 4,000 milligrams. So, but even 1,000 milligrams would be good. So 1 to 4,000 milligrams per day. I've taken it before. It does give you kind of a fishy aftertaste, and some people think it helps if you put it in the freezer and keep it there before you take it. So that's an idea of one thing that you can do if you want the fish oil.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw a couple questions in here wondering about, is canned tuna or canned salmon a processed meat? Is that a good option?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. I mean, it is processed in some way. I still think that would probably be fine. It might have sodium. I don't know. I actually don't know. Maybe another good question for the dietitian for that one.
Yeah, that could be a good question for the dietitian. Off the top of my head, I just know that those canned meats do have a lot of sodium in them. So if you're trying to watch your sodium, it's probably not a great choice, but we'll make sure and ask her that next week.
Okay, and I just have to say hot dogs are like probably the most processed food I can think of, right? So they're probably not a good idea. If you're wanting to cut out processed food, that might be on the top of your list.
Yeah.
And they're high in sodium too, usually.
Yeah. All right, great questions, you guys. Let's see, I'm just trying to see if I missed anything. There's a couple questions in here, you guys, that I'm purposefully not reading because I don't know the answer to, and I'm thinking they're probably better for a dietitian. So if you ask something and I haven't read it back, make sure to ask it next week as well. Specifically the one about flax, I'm not sure.
About what?
This person's wondering if flax is a grain and if you would suggest using it and how would you use it. So I just wasn't sure about that. Someone else asked, is corn a grain or a vegetable? That's a great question. I think it's classified as both. I don't know, Gretchen, do you know?
I've always thought it's just a starch, so I don't know that it is, it's not considered a vegetable, I'm pretty sure. But
Oh,
officially,
okay.
that would be a good trivia question for the dietitian, because we
Yeah,
have
we can
discussion
see
in
what
my
she
family
thinks.
too.
Okay, let's see. I was hoping I didn't miss a. Oh, I missed one of our polls. Sorry, guys. But okay, we have a poll coming up, so that'll be good. Okay, so other recommendations here. This recommendation is about saturated fat. So eating too much saturated fat can raise what we call your bad cholesterol. That's your LDL cholesterol in your blood, which can increase a person's risk of heart disease and stroke. So the AHA recommends limiting your intake to less than 7% of your daily calories. So just to give you kind of an idea, let's say you're eating a 2,000 calorie diet. That's kind of what we use for the standard diet. That's about 16 grams of saturated fat per day would be the upper limit. And to put this into perspective, an average slice of pepperoni pizza contains about 9 grams of saturated fat. So just 2 pieces of pizza could potentially put a person over their daily recommended amount of saturated fat. So that's kind of how easy it is to ingest those fats when you're eating, I guess, more processed foods or a lot of animal foods, animal products. So like I said, saturated fat comes mainly from animal sources. Think, red meat, poultry, full fat dairy products have a lot of saturated fat. And it can also be found in processed baked goods like donuts and packaged cookies, kind of any of that stuff that you can grab and go from the supermarket. A lot of times will have a lot of saturated fats in it. So switching to a more plant-based eating style, which when I say that, that can have a variety of meanings, but really what it means is to eat mostly grains, beans, legumes, vegetables, and fruits with small amounts of animal products on the side. That's the best way to reduce your intake of saturated fats. Okay, so is Juliet still on? Yes, Juliet, will you launch our poll? We skipped our first one, but will you launch our second one? Perfect. Okay, so most people eat too much sodium. What does the American Heart Association recommend as an ideal limit of sodium per day for most adults? And this says multiple choice, but just pick the one that you think is the best option. Awesome, you guys did so good. 89% of you answered that correctly. So 1,500 milligrams is an ideal limit of sodium per day for most adults. So almost all of you got that right. Nice job. All right, you guys, so let's talk a little bit about the DASH eating plan. We had lots of questions about this. DASH is actually an abbreviation. It stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So it's an eating plan specifically for people who have high blood pressure or who want to prevent it. So it's basically everything we've just covered would fall within the DASH eating plan. It emphasizes healthy food sources, but it also really limits red meat, sodium, which we'll talk a lot about next week, and then sweets, added sugars, and any sugar-containing beverages. Let me just find myself here. Sorry, you guys. So I did want to mention that it's sometimes nice to have a very clear and concise diet to follow. So if that's something that you're looking for, this link that I have here that we will actually copy and paste into the chat right now is a great place to start. So this is from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. It's all about the DASH diet. It's how to follow it. It has other resources. So if you're really interested in having a very specific outline of how to eat a healthy diet that's good for blood pressure, good for your heart health, I would start here. Another thing too is you could take a picture of this link as well, or Google search DASH eating plan. This was the first thing that came up for me. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now that we've talked all about a healthy diet, I would just like to briefly talk about what's the benefit? What is the benefit of eating a healthy diet? So you can see this list here. It can prevent heart disease and stroke. It may contribute to achieving and maintaining a healthy body mass index. Sometimes you'll hear that just abbreviated as BMI. It can improve focus and concentration. It may lower a person's blood sugar. Actually, consuming a healthy diet over a period of time can actually reduce unhealthy cravings, which is nice. It can lower cholesterol. It can give you more energy, and it may also lower a person's risk of depression. So that being said, let's go to the next slide. I want to know, what are the benefits of eating a healthy diet for you specifically as an individual? So please enter into the chat. At a time in your life where you were eating a healthy diet, what benefits did you notice? Maybe you had more energy, maybe you felt like you could concentrate better. So what were the things that you guys noticed on a personal level when you were eating healthy? Oh, so many good responses. Okay, let's see. Oops, went up too far. Jody mentioned weight loss, more energy. Lisa, more energy, felt great, wonderful. I think the feeling great and the energy is one of the best motivators. Better sleep, lots of people are saying better sleep, more energy and better self-esteem. I love that. Healthy weight. A lot of people are saying they felt better about themselves, they had a better self-image. I love that just eating a healthy diet can do that for us, just make us feel more, just better. Better sleep, better concentration, clothes fit better, better moods, absolutely. No joint pain. That's, a lot of people will mention that. Less aches and pains, less headaches. A lot of people are saying more energy. That's a reason to do it right there. This person felt more positive about life and their weight. That's wonderful. This person had better mobility, lower blood pressure, less joint pain. Those are all wonderful reasons to eat healthy. Oh, I love this. Tammy says they had more energy, they felt better in their clothes, and they had pride that they were sticking to a plan. That's great. This person mentioned that their asthma has actually improved since they started eating better. Feeling better in mind and body. Helped eliminate brain fog. I've heard that one before, absolutely. Great, you guys. So many of you guys are saying energy, energy, sleep. Bonnie said to set a good example for her grandchildren. She just felt better overall. Wonderful. I love that. That's really encouraging. So I'd like to do that because realizing the benefits of improving your health is a really important step for each of us. I could sit here and tell you all day the benefits of eating a healthy diet, but until you realize for yourself, oh, it gives me more energy, it helps me sleep better, it's not likely that you'll want to make the change. It has to be significant and important to you on a personal level. So for that reason, I encourage you to just quickly jot down, just while I'm chatting, the reasons that you like to eat healthy. Because I think sometimes when we do it for a while, we're like, oh gosh, I want my X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that we like to eat that's kind of out of our unhealthy box. And I think having that list can be really beneficial to say, yeah, but when I'm eating when I'm eating my chips or hot dogs or whatever it is every night, I really don't feel as good. So this is worth it for me. Okay, next slide, please. Next, I just want to quickly go over some healthy preparations. So one of the best ways to improve the quality of your diet is to just prepare your foods with less salt and less fat and less sugar. So these are just some things that you might try. Maybe stock up on some heart healthy cookbooks and recipes. Um, Steam, bake, grill, boil, or microwave your foods instead of frying to help keep the fat content down. I read a study, I think last year, that showed microwaving vegetables is the best way to heat them while allowing them to maintain their nutrients. I was blown away by that because people are so scared of the microwave. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just in my realm of friends, but apparently steaming your veggies in the microwave is a great way to go, and it's super quick. So keep that in mind. Modify or eliminate recipes that include butter or ask you to deep fry or saute an animal fat. We just want to stay away from that as much as we can. And then use nonstick cookware or an oil spray like a Pam spray, or water instead of butter, excess amounts of oil. Okay, next. All right, some more healthy preparations. Use and prepare foods that contain little or no salt. So like I mentioned before, when you're shopping for canned vegetables, trying to buy the varieties that have, they say, low sodium or no sodium added. And then try not to add to add salt to food as it's cooking. Wait until you're done preparing the food and then taste it first and see if it needs additional flavoring. What I like to do is just go ahead and half the salt that recipes call for. So I start there, and then if my food still seems like it needs a little bit more salt, I can add it in later. But I'd rather have too little salt than too much salt from the get-go. And then when using oils, choose those that are liquid at room temperature. So that could be an olive oil or a canola oil. There was a big craze around coconut oil for a while. Coconut oil is a saturated fat, and it is actually solid at room temperature. So until we have some more research, I would just stick with the olive oil or the canola oil. And then use, sorry, you guys, use fresh herbs, lemon juice, or vinegar to add flavor to your food. Vinegar can actually make foods taste saltier or sweeter depending on the nature of the food. So let's say you're cooking chili and it doesn't taste salty enough, but you don't want to add too much salt. You could add a little vinegar and it can bring out some of those natural flavors. Okay, I'm going to take some more questions and then we'll do another poll. So Gretchen, you might know this one. Does sugar tend to raise bad cholesterol or LDL cholesterol?
Yeah, inadvertently it can, because sugar turns to fat, and then fat, yeah, the way that it's processed, yes, it can. It is broken down, and that's kind of the thing with sugar, is it goes into your cells and it creates fat, and those fat cells get bigger and bigger, and so that's why it's really important to eat a low fat diet and not, yeah.
Okay. Where do cheeses fit in as a protein? This person says they know the calories are high.
Where do cheeses fit in?
Yeah.
Well, the calories are high, but the fat content is, you're getting the bad kinds of fats that increase your triglycerides and your LDL in cheeses. So cheese needs to be more of a moderation type thing.
Yeah, and I think specifically too, I know cheese does have protein, but I don't look at it as a protein source, just a condiment. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a protein source, but yeah, it is.
Okay. Is lean pork, not bacon or sausage, considered a red meat?
I believe that I would consider it a red meat.
Okay.
I don't know. Some of these questions would be good for the dietitian.
Yeah, I agree.
I consider that a red meat.
Okay. And then is it possible to eat a healthy low carb diet? That might be a good one for the dietitian as well.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's right. A healthy low carb diet is exactly what we need to be going for. So, I recommend to people, if no high fructose corn syrup, and no processed food, no sodas because they're oftentimes high in sodium and in sugar. A lot of your electrolytes are super high in sodium and sugar, so you need to be careful about those things too. Plain old water is the best thing you can have, or coffee with cream in it. We're not saying fats are bad. Fats are good. It's the carbohydrates that get processed into fats that are really the big problem, because that creates the insulin resistance that is the centerpiece of the whole problem, and why you need to really have a good diet.
Okay, yeah. There's a few more questions in here, you guys, but I want to make sure we have time to get to our video. So let's go ahead and watch this video, and then we'll if we have time at the end, we'll do some more questions.
Hello, my name is Samantha Susak. I am the bistro manager at Huckleberry's Natural Market in Spokane, Washington. I am here today to give you some helpful tips and tricks in making a heart-healthy chicken and quinoa soup. You can find this recipe at the American Heart Association website at heart.org. Just search chicken and quinoa soup. This is a quick and easy recipe for anyone who is in a time crunch and requires very minimal cooking skills. There are 10 ingredients total, not including the water, 4 which that need to be prepped. This will be 20 minutes cooking time total, including prep, and will make about 6 servings. When shopping for this recipe, there are some simple swap outs and some helpful tips that I will give you. A lot of things you can buy have added salt in them that make them less heart healthy. Be sure to use a fat-free, low-sodium chicken broth the recipe calls for, or go an extra step further and use unsalted broth. Same goes for chicken. If you use frozen chicken instead of fresh, that will still work great for this recipe, but check the label and make sure that the frozen chicken hasn't been injected with broth that greatly increases the sodium content. When switching from fresh to frozen ingredients, there may be a loss in texture, but not a loss in nutrient content. So another option that you can have is, instead of using fresh thyme, you could always use dried thyme. This also means less prep. Quinoa can be found in most supermarkets near other dried grains. Now let me show you just how easy this recipe is to do. So we are going to start off with preparing your mise en place. Mise en place is just a fancy French term that is for preparing your food ahead of time to make cooking that much easier. So to start off, you're going to want to get your cutting board, a chef's knife preferably, a large saucepan or saute pan, liquid measuring cups that will have your 3/4 or 1/3 markings on it, a teaspoon and tablespoon, and a small strainer for your quinoa or any rinsing that you will have to do. If using jarred garlic, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic from the jar is about the size of 1 large clove. When buying canned, dried, or frozen vegetables, make sure to compare the food labels and choose products with the lowest amount of sodium and added sugars. You don't want the stem with thyme, you just want the leaves. So just pick those off best you can. A great way to reduce sodium without impacting flavor in your meals is to use fresh herbs and spices to flavor dishes instead of adding salt. Think about vinegars, citrus, lemons, peppers, and spices like rosemary and basil to add to your flavor palette. So to start this recipe, you're going to put your pot on your stove, turn it on to a medium-high, and then add your broth and your water. Next, you'll add in your onion, your garlic, your carrots, your thyme, your bay leaf, and your pepper. And most importantly, your chicken. So you're going to cook this for 5 minutes, bringing it to a boil on a medium-high. Meanwhile, you're going to take your strainer and your quinoa and give that a rinse, and you just want that to run clear. This recipe asks you to rinse the quinoa that can have a bitter coating on the outside. However, you can skip this step if you purchase pre-washed quinoa. And then we're just going to put this quinoa in and stir, and then let that cook for another 5 minutes. So you're going to stir in the snap peas, cook for another 5 to 8 minutes until the quinoa is tender and your chicken is no longer pink. So now that we are done, you're going to want to discard your bay leaf if you can find it. And then your serving size is about 1 1/3 cups. And it's as simple as that. Thank you for letting me walk you through this heart-healthy recipe. On behalf of the American Heart Association and Providence Spokane Heart Institute, we hope you enjoy and share this heart-healthy recipe and wish you the best on your Better You journey.
All right.
Hello, my name is...
So let's go over your to-dos for this week, you guys, and then I'm fine to stay a couple extra minutes since we have some questions that have been coming in. So for this week from your Better You booklet, you want to complete pages 6 through 7. That's just your week 2, which is titled Increase Your Blood Pressure IQ. This includes keeping track of your fruit and veggie intake and deciding if you're eating healthy meals. So a simple way, or I guess not simple, but something that you could consider when you're tracking the healthy meals, if you're saying, am I eating healthy meals? Think to yourself, okay, do my meals align with kind of the things that we went over today? And then maybe say yes, no, that can kind of just simplify it a little bit. Okay, next. And then lastly, your to-dos again is to continue to take your blood pressure. I think the slides are just lagging a little bit. There we go. So use the worksheet titled My Blood Pressure Log to keep track of your blood pressure readings again this week, just like you did last week. If you forget how to take your blood pressure, I just want to grab this. Remember that we sent you home with this infographic. This is what I was referencing when I was taking my blood pressure today. This has everything on there that you need to know. So make sure you pull this out of your welcome packet and reference that, or use the link to the video that we showed last week. And then there's lots of questions about how to submit if you're tracking your homework, you're going to submit that using the link in the newsletter that comes to your email. So you'll click the link where it says to submit your data and you'll put it in there. And that's how we'll know if you did all your homework, so you can be entered to win. So thank you all so much for coming today. I apologize. I feel like I was rushing a little bit through some of those slides, but I know it's a lot of information. Hopefully next week we can get some of those good questions to our dietitian. But thank you, Gretchen, for your help with all of the questions. And I'm just going to hang out for a little bit and I'll answer some questions. So if you guys want to stick around, that is no problem. Okay, so someone wrote in, what about eggs? Gretchen, what's your take on eggs?
Egg whites are really high in protein. Egg yolks are really high in cholesterol. I think that egg whites are a great source of protein. You might want to be careful with how much of the egg yolk you're eating, but yeah.
Okay, good. And then I really wanted to get this one to you, Gretchen. So this person said, I am confused on why I can take one blood pressure reading and it is 149/81. I wait a couple of minutes and do it again, and then I get 129/82.
Yeah, so like I said, there are definitely blood pressure variations that occur. If you're noticing that a lot, one thing that you can do is take your blood pressure 3 times and sort of see what is the average of those 3. And that's probably pretty accurate. But again, the more you take it and you get kind of neurotic about it, which I have had patients do, that's not healthy either. So we're just looking for a trend And for most of your blood pressures to be really well controlled, things of, if you're stressed out about getting your blood pressure then and anxious about how high it's going to be, it's probably going to be elevated. So, just rest, do the things that Katie showed you at the beginning of it, where you're just sitting relaxed, and then wait a couple minutes, take it again, and then maybe even take it a third time and see what your blood pressure is, or take it on the other arm.
Okay.
But don't worry too much about the differences.
Okay. So I know this was something that we addressed maybe in our last meeting, but maybe not. This person says they have the large adult cuff, but it still comes off. So they have been using the normal cuff on their forearm. Their question is, does it need to be positioned closer to my wrist or elbow? I'm wondering if maybe they need a bigger cuff or a wrist cuff.
Yeah, I would say you might benefit from the extra large. There's an extra large one that you could order.
Okay.
So, yeah, someone's asking for the link of the extra large blood pressure cuff, and I think that we can get that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can send the link for the extra large blood pressure cuff. And I know we'll also send a link for healthy cooking oils, some recipes from the American Heart Association, and then the link for you guys to submit your data as well. So all of that good stuff will be in your follow-up materials for this week. So make sure to keep an eye on that. Okay, one more before we go, you guys. What is your thought about yogurt, Gretchen?
Well, that's another good one. I heard somebody talking on the radio about yogurt. There are really good options. The Greek yogurts are excellent source of protein, and they tend to be lower in sugar. Obviously, plain yogurt doesn't have sugar, but I don't know a lot of people that love to eat yogurt. I think it's pretty good, but they can have a lot of sugar, so you want to be careful of that.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. And then this was just kind of something that someone mentioned. You mentioned drawing prizes. Yes, we will do some wellness prizes at our last session so make sure you're turning in your homework every week or your logs every week, and then you'll be entered to win. All right, you guys, I think we got to most of it. Again, if I didn't get to your question, I'm saving it for the dietitian. So make sure you write it in the chat box again next week. But thank you guys so much for being here. If you need anything at all during the week, please email us at wellness@inhs.org, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.